Hello, our dear students, online audience. You are all welcome back again to today's science class. And the topic we want to consider today is living things. Living things. What do we mean by living things? Living things can be defined the as things that has life and characteristics of life. The things that has life and characteristics of life, they are what we refer to as living things. Example of living things are plants and animals. Plants and animals, they have characteristics of life. And what are those characteristics? We have number one, movement. Movement is a characteristic of life and it's a characteristic of living things. We have another one, respiration. Is a characteristic that is peculiar to plants and animals. We have nutrition. Nutrition is another one. And then we have irritability is another one. We have growth is another one. We have excretion is also part of characteristics of living things, plants and animals. We have reproduction is also part of the characteristics of plants and animals. We have limited lifespan is part of the characteristics. We have limited size is also another characteristics. We also have competition is a characteristics of plant and animal. We have adaptation is also one of the characteristics of plant and animal. We have maintenance of constant internal environment. It's also one of the characteristics of living things. So that maintenance of constant internal environment, we call it homeostasis. Homeostasis. So out of the three branches of pure science, the aspects of pure science that deals with the study of living things is biology. Biology is a branch of pure science that deals with the study of living things. Now, biology is basically divided into two groups. Just majorly two groups. We have number one, zoology. Zoology. What do we mean by zoology? Zoology is a branch of science that study animal only. The branch of science that study animal only, that is zoology. Then, botany is a branch of science that study plants only. The branch of science that study plants only, that is botany. Now, there are various characteristics of living things, just like I said earlier on. One of them is movement. Movement. What do we mean by movement? Movement referred to as locomotion. That is the act of changing position. Locomotion. Most animals, they move from one place to another, either in search of one, food. Animals move from one place to another in search of food. Two, in search of shelter. Animals move from one place to another while they are searching or looking for shelter. Three, in search of mate or partner. Animal move from one place to another while they are searching for partner. Four, while they are trying to escape from enemies or hunter. Animal move from one place to another. But plant is fixed. Plant only has ability to move certain parts of its body during shoot, that is growth movement in shooting parts of the plant or growth movement in the root part of the plant. As the branches, they live, as they grow, they move. That is the shoot movement. Then, while the root is also elongating, increasing in length, they also move. That is part of movement in plants. Also, we have some plants that usually open and close their leaf or flower. Those type of plants, that type of phenomenon, we also call it movement. in plants. Now, the next characteristics of living things we're going to consider here is respiration. Respiration. What do we mean by respiration? Respiration is the oxidation or breaking down of food substances to release energy. Oxidation or breaking down of food substances to release energy. Oxidation or breaking down of food substances to release energy. When we say breaking down or oxidation, the food that plants and animals have in their body, mostly it is glucose or starch or sugar. We also call it carbohydrates, and this is the formula. So when there is oxidation I mean addition of oxygen to that carbohydrate or to that glucose in our body system. When we breathe in oxygen, the glucose inside us is reacted with oxygen, and that break it down, and the result now become the production of carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So the waste products of respiration are carbon dioxide and water. The carbon dioxide, we breathe it out in the course of respiration, while oxygen, we breathe it in the course of respiration. Another characteristics of living thing is nutrition. Nutrition. What do we mean by nutrition? Nutrition is the act of feeding or taking in food substances to provide chemical energy needed for work or material needed for growth and repair of worn out tissues. Nutrition is the act of feeding or taking food substances. That food substances that we take in, they are going to provide us with chemical energy that we need to work. And also, it will also provide us with material that our body need for growth and repair of worn out tissues. Animals cannot manufacture their own food, but they depend directly or indirectly on plants. What do we mean by depending directly on plants? Let's take, for instance, grasshopper. Grasshopper has the capacity to feed directly on plants. Now, look at another animal, lizard. Lizard feed on grasshopper. Now, grasshopper feed directly on plants. Lizard feed indirectly on plants by feeding on grasshopper. And so, animals do not manufacture their own food, but they depend directly or indirectly on plants. Green plants, they manufacture their own food. Green plants usually manufacture their own food through the process called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process that green plants usually use to manufacture their own food. The leaves has what we call chlorophyll. That is the green pigment that leaf has. That chlorophyll absorbs the sunlight energy, and carbon dioxide is diffused through the leaf into the plant. Then water is absorbed from the root system of the plant. All this comes together to eventually produce what we call starch, and that is carbohydrate. It's also called glucose. So this is the starch, and then oxygen is given out as byproduct. So the byproduct of photosynthesis is oxygen. I want to believe it's very clear. That is very good. But I want you to note something. The first stage, the first product that is produced from photosynthesis is hydroxide ion. Hydroxide ion is one of the products, the first stage of the product that is going to be obtained from photosynthesis, and that is obtained from the splitting of water. When water splits into two, we have hydrogen ion and hydroxide ion. Hydroxide ion is one of the products of the first stage of photosynthesis, while the product of the final stage of photosynthesis is starch. I believe it's very clear to everybody. That is very good. Now I want to quickly proceed to class assessment. Class assessment. Class assessment number 1. The question says, biology is defined as branch of pure science that study dash. Biology is defined as branch of pure science that study dash. A. The composition, properties, changes that matter undergo, and forces that holds the structure together. B. Man and his physical environment. C. The measurement of quantities and relation between matter and energy. D. Living things, plants and animal. The most appropriate option from this class assessment is option D. Biology is defined as branch of pure science that study living things, plants and animal. Now, question class assessment 2. The branch of science that study plants is known as dash. The branch of science that study plants is known as dash. A. Zoology. B. Farming. C. Botany. D. Agriculture. So the most appropriate option here is botany. Botany is a branch of pure science that study plants. Class assessment 3. Which of the following is the waste product of respiration? Which of the following is the waste product of respiration? A. Oxygen. B. Carbon dioxide. C. Sugar. D. Energy. The most appropriate option here is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the waste product of respiration. Carbon dioxide is the waste product of respiration. Now we want to continue in the class. But then, before we continue, I want to remind you that you should try as much as possible to subscribe into this channel if you have not done so. These characteristics of living things we are going to consider is irritability. That is number 4. Irritability. What do we mean by irritability? Irritability is the ability of living organisms to respond to internal and external stimulus. Internal and external stimulus. Response to stimulus in animal is referred to as taxism. Taxism. Now let's take for instance, if an animal touches an hot object, it immediately withdraws from that hot object. That hot object is the stimulus, while the response to that hot object is the response, and that is irritability. But in plants, response to stimulus in plants is called tropism. Response to stimulus in plants is called tropism. Let's take for instance the shoot system of plants. The shoot system usually bend towards the source of light or the source of sunlight. That bending towards the source of sunlight is called phototropism. Phototropism. Also, the root system of plants usually bend towards the source of water. That bending towards the source of water by the root system of plants is called hydrotropism. Hydrotropism. Then we now notice that generally plants usually respond to Earth's gravity. The gravity is saying come down, while the plant is saying go up. So response to Earth's gravity by plants is called geotropism. Geotropism. I want to believe it's very clear. Now we want to quickly go into class assessment. Class assessment. And class assessments we have in number 1 to 3 have been attended to, but this time around you are going to do it by yourself. Class assessment 1. Biology is defined as branch of pure science that study dash. A. The composition, properties, and changes that matter undergo and forces that hold the structure together. B. Man and his physical environment. C. The measurement of quantities and relationship between matter and energy. D. Living things, plants and animal. So you are going to choose the most appropriate option out of this. Now, class assessment 2. The branch of science that study plants only is known as dash. The branch of science that study plants only is known as dash. A. Zoology. B. Farming. C. Botany. D. Agriculture. You choose the best, the most appropriate option here. Class assessment 3. Which of the following is the waste product of respiration? Which of the following is the waste product of respiration? A. Oxygen. B. Carbon dioxide. C. Sugar. D. Energy. So you are going to go through this and choose the most appropriate option. Now, class assessment 4. Class assessment 4. Class assessment 4 says the equation below represents the process of dash. And here is the equation. We have this, then we have this and this. So the equation below represents the process of dash. A. Reproduction. B. Photosynthesis. C. Excretion. D. Respiration. You choose the most appropriate option out of that. Class assessment 5. The branch of science that study animal only is referred to as dash. The branch of science that study animal only is referred to as dash. A. Tropism. B. Zoology. C. Taxism. D. Botany. So you also choose the most appropriate option out of that. Class assessment 6. The following are characteristics of living things except. The following are characteristics of living things except A. Nutrition. B. Accommodation. C. Movement. D. Respiration. You choose the most appropriate option out of that. Class assessment 7. The process of oxidation of food substances to release energy is referred to as dash. The process of oxidation of food substances to release energy is referred to as dash. A. Nutrition. B. Photosynthesis. C. Respiration. D. Digestion. You choose the most appropriate option out of that. Now, class assessment 8. The question says the equation below represents the process of dash. Here is the equation. Option A. Excretion. Option B. Respiration. Option C. Nutrition. Option D. Photosynthesis. You choose the most appropriate option out of those ones. Class assessment 9. The breaking down of food substances to release energy is known as dash. The breaking down of food substances to release energy is known as dash. A. Development. B. Nutrition. C. Excretion. D. Respiration. You choose the most appropriate option out of this. Class assessment 10. Which of the following substances is the byproduct of the process of photosynthesis in green plants? Which of the following substances is the byproduct of the process of photosynthesis in green plants? Option A. Water. Option B. Carbon dioxide. Option C. Oxygen. Option D. Energy. You choose the most appropriate option out of that. Class assessment 11. The ability of a living organism to detect and respond to changes in the environment is known as dash. The ability of a living organism to detect and respond to changes in the environment is known as dash. Option A, growth. Option B, locomotion. Option C, reaction. Option D, irritability. We choose the most appropriate option out of that. Class assessment 12. The following are characteristics of living organisms except. The following are characteristics of living organisms except option A, nutrition. B, irritability. Option C, association. Option D, respiration. We choose the most appropriate option out of that. Class assessment 13. Irritability in living organism is broadly divided into two groups, which are irritability in living organism is broadly divided into two groups, which are A, apical and intercalary, B, sexual and asexual, C, anabolism and catabolism, D, tropism and taxism. So you choose the most appropriate option out of that. Class assessment 14. The question says the response to change in plants as the shoot system grows towards the source of light is known as dash. The response to change in plants as the shoot system grows towards the source of light is known as dash. A, geotropism. B, hydrotropism. C, syntotropism. D, phototropism. So you choose the most appropriate option out of that. Class assessment 15. Which of the following are the characteristics of living organisms? Which of the following are the characteristics of living organisms? Roman figure 1, nutrition. Roman figure 2, photosynthesis. Roman figure 3, respiration. Roman figure 4, movement. Option A, 1, 2, and 4 only. Option B, 2, 3, and 4 only. Option C, 1, 3, and 4 only. And option D, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You choose the most appropriate option out of that. Class assessment 16. Response to change in plants as the root grow towards the source of water is called dash. Response to change in plants as the root grow towards the source of water is called dash. A, phototropism. B, hydrotropism. C, geotropism. D, syntotropism. So you choose the most appropriate option out of that. Now we have come to the end of today's class, but before we go, I would like to remind us once again that you should try as much as possible to subscribe into this channel if you have not done so. So here we have come to the end of today's class. Until we meet again in the next class, bye for now.